If you know anything about Nintendo's oddities when it comes to older games and consoles, then the failure of the Virtual Boy might interest you quite a bit. The Virtual Boy was a 32-bit portable tabletop video game console thing that was developed, manufactured, and released by Nintendo back in 1995. This wasn't any ordinary game system made by Nintendo though, no, that would be ridiculous. You know Nintendo always needs to have a gimmick when they put anything out. This video game console was able to display stereoscopic 3D graphics. Oh my goodness! While Nintendo had previously attempted a 3D gaming experience with the Famicom 3D system, the Virtual Boy ultimately met the same fate as its predecessor, becoming a commercial failure. And for good reason as well. First off, playing the Virtual Boy on a tabletop, necessitating players to cram their faces into a visor-like device to view the gameplay, resulted in significant discomfort for many users. On top of this, the 3D graphics that were displayed could only use hues of red and black instead of full color graphics. This was done due to the cost effectiveness when producing this console. It was a lot cheaper and more reliable to use red LEDs in this device in order to show the best 3D effect. But once again, paying a premium for games to only be shown in black and red was something you really couldn't fathom at the time. Which closes into the final point, the price. At the time of its launch, the Virtual Boy retailed for $179, which if you were to plug that into a little inflation calculator, that becomes over $521 in the year 2024. That is literally more money than a disc-based PS5. So because this device was, not really ergonomic, and it just didn't really have the best graphics, and it just costed way too much money at the time, of course it would become a failure and sit in Nintendo's vault, only to be referenced in future games such as Smash Bros. And even WarioWare. And just like that, the Virtual Boy would be forgotten. That is, until a new 3D experience would be on Nintendo's radar. 2011 would see the release of Nintendo's newest handheld, the Nintendo 3DS. And I'm just gonna skip to the part where I say, Nintendo literally fumbled the bag in not including anything Virtual Boy related for this handheld, because obviously they could have remade the games with newer graphics, or at least ported the games onto the 3DS eShop or something. Either way, if you wanted to play Virtual Boy games in true 3D fashion at this point, you still had to purchase a console secondhand, with all the games separately, pretty much costing you way too much money for an experience you don't even know if you're gonna like. Something huge happens within the 3DS modding community. The release of Red Dragon for the 3DS allows for playthrough of Virtual Boy ROMs. The only issue with this was that apparently this emulator had a bunch of issues with it, such as game crashes, game glitches, games not loading, and most importantly, the 3D stereoscopic feature wasn't really working at all or something. So although the Red Dragon emulator was a bit buggy and wasn't entirely perfect, technically it was a step in the right direction for being able to play Virtual Boy games with their 3D ability. Enter the modern times where the Wii U and the 3DS are no longer being supported, the city has run rampant, and talks about modding your 3DS infiltrate almost any conversation that brings up emulation. The 3DS modding community gets a little surprise in the form of a new Virtual Boy emulator known as Red Viper. Now, this one is special because unlike Red Dragon, Red Viper has the ability to actually play Virtual Boy games in their full glory. By using the already included 3D stereoscopic feature built in onto the 3DS, you are now able to play virtual games in actual 3D. And on top of that, no longer did you have to stick with such an ugly red and black color palette, because now you could actually change the color to whatever you'd like. Sadly, still no full color graphics, but this is still great because playing the games in strict white, gray, and black makes it feel like you're just playing an original Game Boy game. Either way, I wanted to talk about all the North American Virtual Boy games released, because as you guys know, the Virtual Boy was a commercial failure, and I'm pretty sure another factor with that has to be that the games aren't that great either. Overall, there were like 23 games in total released for the Virtual Boy, but only 14 of them were really playable in the US. I'll go through them pretty quickly because in my opinion, there are at least 2 that you definitely need to check out. Starting off with 3D Tetris. This is a pretty cool take on Tetris where you're stacking different blocks in a tower instead of a 2D plane. The actual 3D feature isn't too crazy on this one, and I think this game would be pretty cool to see on a console itself. The levels get really difficult the deeper you go, but ultimately it's just not my cup of tea, and I wouldn't see myself playing this for hours on end. Galactic Pinball. Although I like pinball, this one was just kind of boring to me. I think one of the best things about pinball in general is the amount of flashing lights and colors you're able to see on an actual table. The 3D feature on this goes pretty deep, but other than that, it was just kind of boring and it just didn't really keep my attention. Golf. So, seeing these courses in 3D on this game was actually pretty interesting, as the depth between you and the hole would change drastically. There are a few cool things to mention, such as the swing meter or where you hit the ball, but overall, I found myself kind of struggling to get the ball in the hole once I got close enough. The game is decent, definitely not the best for this console, but I could see myself spending a little bit more time on it. And also, around this time, I forgot that you could change the color of the screen, so hopefully this helps with the viewing experience. Jack Bros. Now this one is bound to be great because it was developed by Atlas. This is an actual story-based game where you've got different levels of enemies until you reach a boss battle. Let me just say, this one is a definite must-play. The 3D feature works amazing on it, and overall the game was just really entertaining as well. I could 100% see myself coming back to play this with or even without the 3D just to get through the story. Mario Clash. Now, if you've ever played WarioWare, then this game might look a little bit familiar because it's actually referenced in it. Mario Clash has you throwing turtle shells at other turtles and spinies in order to clear the levels. Although this one is pretty basic, I feel like this game sits higher on the ranking when it comes to quality. The 3D feature is pretty basic, as you just have two separate layers to focus on, but what can you expect when this game seems to be more of a mini game like it is in WarioWare? Mario's Tennis. This is one game that desperately calls for you to use the 3D feature because without it, your depth perception is non-existent when trying to hit the tennis ball on the court. I like the sprites in this game, and I feel like overall this would work really well, but I felt like this game was weirdly difficult, man. Now, I might just be bad at the game, I'm kind of known for that, but I could not score to save my life. So I think it's a decent game and probably worth playing for a little bit. I don't know, you'd have to check it out for yourself. Now these last 8 I'll probably go through pretty quickly because honestly they're not that exciting, except for one of them. Nestor's Funky Bowling. I just didn't like this one. It just feels like there was way too much going on with the scene transitions and the controls just didn't feel right. Honestly, probably one of the lowest ranking games on here for me. Panic Bomber. Now this one is kind of sad because I thought it was going to be a classic Bomberman game, but it's just a falling block style game, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just sort of too basic for me in the sense that having this on the Virtual Boy just doesn't really do the console justice. Red Alarm. I wished that this one was going to rock because having a 3D space shooter is a perfect idea for the Virtual Boy. I didn't care for it because it was kind of straining my eyes a bit, and plus this would have been way cooler as a Star Fox game, but then again, Star Fox on the SNES is already better than this. Tolero Boxer. This one felt like it had a ton of potential behind it. Think of Super Punch-Out, but with giant robots. I really liked the 3D effects on this, and everything felt so smooth, but sadly the controls and gameplay were just not it, man. This would have been such a great game, but honestly, I just found it kind of difficult. Vertical Force. Nothing too crazy about this one. It's a top-down shooter with a top layer and a bottom layer that you can switch between. The 3D function on this wasn't too crazy as well, so overall, this was kind of like your baseline, average sort of Virtual Boy title. Virtual Boy Wario Land. Now, this is the other game I definitely recommend everyone to try out. Much like Jack Bros, this game of course has a story to it with different levels. The 3D functionality felt so smooth, and playing through a Wario Land game with it definitely felt new. I didn't get too far into it, but the graphics and the gameplay all just felt so well put together. A definite must play if you're going to be trying out these Virtual Boy games. Virtual League Baseball. It's baseball, what do you expect? It's not bad, but it's also not the best. Timing your swing to hit the ball felt really fun and rewarding, but when it came to pitching and having to catch the ball, it was just kind of difficult. I think the controls could have been way better for this one, as having to control everyone on the field for the ball made it so much worse. It's decent at best. Waterworld. Honestly, I didn't even know what was going on in this game. It just kind of throws you into it. There's no main menu screen, so honestly, I just kind of gave up. The 3D graphics were kind of hurting my head as well, so you'd have to check this one out for yourself to know. But yeah, being able to play Virtual Boy games in their full glory on a 3DS was actually a pretty fun experience. Although I didn't really get to play any of the Japanese titles, I'll save that for another time because some of them actually do look like a lot of fun. With that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this small little video. Subscribe if you've made it this far. Bye! Thanks for watching. Mwah.